Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of Peanuts. There is something disarmingly profound about Peanuts, where even the simplest moments turn into a gentle reflection on childhood and small fears we all carry inside. In the January 9th, 1951 strip, we see Charlie Brown in the bathtub, trying to convince himself that baths aren't so bad. With Schultz's subtle humor, what begins as a moment of innocent courage becomes a small revelation about how we often convince ourselves that what we fear is manageable, until a final twist exposes the comforting illusions we create to face our tiny daily challenges. This strip captures the essence of Peanuts, taking a scene as ordinary as a child in a bathtub and turning it into a reflection on courage, growing up, and the small ways we learn to face what scares us, while keeping a light-hearted innocence that only Schultz could convey with such simplicity and depth. In the first vignette, we see Charlie Brown sitting in the bathtub, starting to talk to himself, saying that baths aren't really that bad. This opening introduces us to the theme of the strip, the child's attempt to convince himself that what he fears isn't actually so terrible, a trait that is typical of Charlie Brown's character, always struggling with his own anxieties yet willing to reassure himself. Here, Schultz once again demonstrates his skill in giving depth to children's thoughts, turning a simple moment into a sincere reflection on the small fears that accompany growing up. In its apparent graphic simplicity, this Peanuts vignette stages a theme that each of us has experienced as a child: the fear of ordinary moments that seem enormous, like taking a bath, going to school, or going to bed. Charlie Brown becomes a symbol of childhood, seeking courage in small things, while Schultz, through this Peanuts strip, manages to give a real voice to the inner dialogue of children, showing that even a moment in the bathtub can become an occasion for quiet growth. In this, the greatness of the Peanuts reveals itself once again. The ability to portray vulnerability, shyness, and the desire to overcome one's fears with a bittersweet smile, inside a simple tub filled with water and a few soap bubbles. In the second vignette, Charlie Brown keeps talking, stating with a slightly uncertain voice that, after all, it's just a matter of getting used to taking a bath. The scene maintains a stable framing, with the character staying still in the tub, a sign that Schultz wanted to preserve the continuity of Charlie Brown's thoughts and create that sense of small stillness that, in the Peanuts, becomes a space for reflection. This seemingly simple sentence actually reflects the inner struggle between the desire to grow up and the fear of facing what change represents, a constant theme in the Peanuts and in Schultz's own life. Charlie Brown tries to rationalize his fear of water and baths, attempting to convince himself that all it takes is getting used to it to overcome his difficulties, but the way he remains in the same position with the same expression reveals to the reader his insecurity and need for reassurance. It is a small scene that becomes universal. Schultz uses the normality of an everyday bath to show the struggle of growing up and accepting what we cannot control, with that gentle melancholy that makes the Peanuts a mirror of our fears and our hopes. In the third vignette, Charlie Brown says that actually he doesn't mind at all. This moment is a phase of positive self-deception, in which Charlie Brown tries to convince himself that he is brave, creating a tender moment many of us can relate to. It is as if, for an instant, he tries to defend himself from his own fragility using words, turning his fear into a phrase that sounds strong but remains delicate inside. How many of us have repeated similar phrases to face small daily challenges, from the simplest tasks to the fears we cannot even admit to ourselves? In this small gesture of Charlie Brown, there is all his humanity, that desire to appear strong in the eyes of others and, above all, in his own eyes, while knowing that the fear is still there, silent. Schultz manages to capture this universal feeling with simplicity and immediacy, portraying a child who, without any rhetoric, tells himself that everything is fine even when, inside, he feels insecure. This is what makes the Peanuts feel so deeply real. They tell us about our own small daily battles, making them visible, acceptable, and even sweet in their imperfection. In the fourth vignette comes the final twist. Charlie Brown reveals that there isn't actually any water in the tub, and that's why it isn't bad at all. This completely overturns the meaning of the previous lines, turning the strip into a moment of subtle humor that is typical of the Peanuts, where every everyday situation becomes a small logical short circuit that surprises you and makes you smile. Schulz shows how a child's innocence can reveal the truth behind the small illusions we build to overcome our fears, reminding us that sometimes the simplest solutions are right in front of us, but we don't see them. Charlie Brown's final line is one of those typical endings Schulz used to bring lightness to his strips while keeping a layer of truth that stays with the reader, leaving that gentle melancholy that often accompanies the Peanuts. It's an ending that captures the creativity and irony of the Peanuts, united in a perfect balance that transforms an ordinary situation into a lasting memory for the reader, making us reflect on how even fears and difficulties can be put into perspective if we look at them with the simple and sincere gaze of childhood. In that moment, Charlie Brown is no longer just a child afraid of taking a bath. He becomes a symbol of how imagination can lighten even the small daily battles, giving us a smile that stays with us every time we think back to that vignette from the Peanuts. This vignette from January 9th, 1951 is an example of how Schulz knew how to insert small psychological truths within his vignettes, using Charlie Brown as a mirror of childhood and of those everyday fears that do not disappear even when we grow up. In the early years of the Peanuts, vignettes related to the bathtub appeared frequently because Schulz considered the bath to be a perfect space to show the vulnerability and simplicity of childhood. Even in the graphic simplicity, with few background elements and clean lines, Schulz manages to convey the feeling of silence, waiting, and reflection that you can sense in the empty tub, telling Charlie Brown's world with just a few strokes, but with an intensity that stays with you. It is an invitation to look again at the small fears and small victories of everyday life, reminding us that even a bath without water can become a small personal triumph.
If you enjoyed yourselves, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next friends.